Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Baby Daddy Diaries. I am super excited to have our next guest here. Um, Please, y'all, welcome real estate broker Rick Gomez.
Thank you for having me.
Do me a favor, please, and tell the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, how you got here.
How long do I have? My name is Rick Gomez. Of course, I'm from Corpus Christi, Texas. I feel like I have a long history in Corpus. I did move away and I came back, and I'm thrilled to be back. I love everybody here.
Wonderful. So, the total premise of the podcast is that you qualify to be here. As a matter of fact, congratulations, by the way, because I've heard through the grapevine that you are a baby daddy, or otherwise known as a single father.
I thought it was height, so I appreciate the fact it was the baby daddy thing. But yes, I am a father of a son and a daughter, and with two separate mothers, and I would consider them my baby mamas, I guess.
Your baby mamas. Were you married to either of your baby mamas?
I was briefly married to my son's mother.
So one yes, one no.
That's one yes, one no.
How old are your children now?
They're 17 and 21.
Oh wow! So yeah, you're almost done.
Yeah.
Do they both live here locally?
They don't. Neither live here locally. And honestly, of course, neither even almost done. As you know, as a parent as well, I feel like we're about to enter another phase. Maybe a more expensive phase, maybe a more elongated phase. But the previous phase was fascinating. It went through many states. Both of them traveled a great deal because of their stepfathers. Both of them great stepfathers, and I appreciate the fact. I was very blessed to have fantastic stepfathers to both of them. But now one of them is in Philadelphia, and one of them is in Michigan, and I'm thrilled to be able to visit both places whenever I get a chance.
Wow. Okay. So I got to cut right in, right? So you're a baby daddy. You have two baby mamas, and your baby mamas now have both remarried. There's a new man in your children's life helping to raise them, guide them. And your first words about them were like, hey, I'm lucky that I have them. And very positively you're speaking of them. Was it always that way?
Almost that entire amount, except I might take umbrage just with the part of a new person in their life, that both of them dated for a great deal of time before they involved that individual in my children's life. In other words, I think both the mothers and the stepfathers, in this case, become my friends, did things the right way, and I appreciate that. I feel like that may be setting a standard for myself. If should I ever find myself in that position, then I think that was exactly the right way to do that. But other than that, in answering to your question as to how it's proceeded from there, I think that because of that, I think it's been a positive relationship.
I like that. That's wonderful. I love when we start these conversations off in a positive way. Um, Tell me about your first baby mama. Was it your first ex-wife?
Yes, so the mother of my son is a fantastic person. Without going into too much personal detail, because of course this is just
Of
on our
course.
side and on hers. She was my very first in every single way. Very first girlfriend, very first kiss, and very first everything. I was homeschooled, so as such, we never went to high school. We never went to elementary. Until I was 17, I never really went out until I went to college, and even in college it was somewhat restrained. So a great deal of my upbringing was very directed, that I felt like I was to a purpose when it related to courting or dating. We did meet because her father was our pastor at some point, my pastor in the church, so things tended to come together. One of the ways that people used to meet before we had
The
apps,
way the way it used to
all the
happen
all
organically.
the other awful ways that we're currently doing it. Yes, back then we did things in a fantastically organic way. We actually met each other and developed relationships. So because of that, I feel like we developed admiration and respect, at least on my side. I can certainly say that. And therefore, I think the relationship began on that footing. And despite the fact that there were things that went wrong through it, I think it was able to restore that vein at some point because that was how it began,
I love that. So you're
I think.
saying, hey, we took our time in developing the relationship to make sure that we were friends. And then even though it didn't work out because you already had that strong foundation of mutual respect, it helped you guys go through what really is a very tough time in people's lives. How long between that relationship to your next relationship?
And before I move on to that one, there was
Okay.
that thing. I would also like to point out. I mean, we clearly are an example of success. Success would be coming onto your married baby mommy, baby daddy kind of, podcast. It would be being saying this is exactly what I did and this is how it worked out. I'm saying how it began, and I believe it should have began that way. I believe it was messed up in the middle, and honestly, I take culpability for that. But at the end, I still feel like it resulted in the ultimate, result that we wanted, and that was to have a good kid, a good child, somebody that admired both their father and their mother. So to go on to your next question, though, I know I retracted.
Okay, yeah, now I'm gonna have to like
You
go
saw
back.
you had ADD.
So
I have ADD.
it's gonna be a great show. Okay, because you're saying paramount to everything was that you guys just have a good child, and you understood that in order to have a good child, you had to have a good relationship with each other.
I think that's an absolute. You can't say absolutes. In order to have something, you have to have something else because we have good children without that, right?
Oh,
So we have
okay.
exceptions. Wherever we have exceptions, we don't have absolutes. However, once again, despite the fact that the production wasn't what the formula called for, the formula wasn't bad. The formula was right. I believe the formula began correctly, interjected human weakness, but the production ended up somehow in the same way. The formula is still correct. Between that time that I did that, had that relationship in college, basically post college, and then I came back and I met somebody about 5 years later, and then about 6 or 7 years later, we had a child, my daughter, Ava. I believe during that time I matured a little bit. I think I matured more or less horizontally rather than vertically. In other words, I experienced things like Oscar Wilde says, with old age comes wisdom, but sometimes old age arrives alone. I think perhaps I aged without wisdom for a period of time. Maybe I'm on the other side of that. I hope so.
I love the quote, by the way.
Good quote.
That was a great quote. Um, how have your two children now in separate households, separate mothers, same father? How do they relate to each other?
They love each other more than anything else. They did from the very beginning. Like before they were both able to talk, they had an affinity for one another. Ava was always an affectionate child anyway. Richard was a super affectionate child. So the moment they saw each other, they were hugging, they were kissing, they were everything about them loved each other. It felt like it was a natural affinity.
Do you
It
all?
maintains itself to this day.
And I asked just because you've mentioned that you're friendly with both of their families respectively. Do you guys ever have like a combined holiday where like all your baby mamas, all the stepdads, all the kids, and you?
God forbid.
God, I was like, man, is that hard on you? Like to be in that space with all those
First
people?
part of this entire conversation, I'm feeling uncomfortable so far. Imagining that.
So the answer then is no.
I
No.
feel like never the twins shall meet. I believe everything works out perfectly the way it is. I think there are two separate families. They get along perfectly well, and the kids get along perfectly well. It just feels like it eventually becomes a little bit too convoluted. Could be my interpretation.
Do you spend time with their families, just you and them? Like not everybody together, but like, your son's family, are you welcome there like at Thanksgiving, Christmas?
I know that I'm welcome at both places, and I appreciate that. I've never felt the desire to become involved in the other side of their families.
Is that out of
I
a
have
respect?
so much family here. I have so many cousins. I have so many aunts. I have uncle. I have grandparent. I have parents that are all here. I have nephews and nieces. I think at a certain point, I don't know. Perhaps it's an excuse, but I feel like there's a limit to how much family you can have that you hold close, and there's a place for family that you hold chronologically.
Fair enough.
I would always be friends with them, and I hope they'd be friends with me. I think so. I think we think favorably about one another.
But you seem to have like just such a idyllic kind of utopia and it's all worked out great for you. Was it just the luck of the draw, or do you think that there was anything on your part or on theirs that helped it be what it is today?
Well, by definition, I would think idyllic or utopian is fake. It's obviously not real. It's not
It's
consistently
fake.
the way. Yeah, well, it's idyllic. It's the ideal of something, but it's not what real is. Utopian. Thomas More talked about a place that didn't physically exist. His whole book on utopia was about the fact that it was not a tangible place. So I'm talking about what I believe and I hope that all things are. I recognize there's resentment. I recognize there's issues. I recognize there's distrust. I recognize there's suspicion within the family, especially extended family. However, what I would love to have, that idyllic or that utopian idea, is that we all have a commonality of purpose. And whenever we're looking for the same objective, whenever we all want the same thing, then we should be making decisions based on that objective. What is the objective? What are we all talking about here? It's not about the mama. It's not about the my. It's about the baby. We're here for the baby. We're here for the kids. The whole idea why we're here is how to raise good children. And if that's to have the father, then we should have that. And if that's to have the mother and the father in harmony, then we should have that. Whatever our decisions are should be based upon what we want the outcome to be. And the outcome is a good, well raised child.
I say that because you are having an exceptional experience. I believe the current rate of single parent households are 47% in the state of Texas currently. And I, again, I would have to double check my statistic, but I want to say 78% of households are single parent households are receiving government assistance because they do not have the benefit of the father, the baby daddy, the child support period in their lives. So when somebody refers me a baby daddy, hey, you should talk to this person because I think that they're doing it right. And it was actually another baby daddy that referred you to me or me to you, however it worked out. I was interested mostly because I go, how do you think you got that done when there's so much dysfunction that we can put a number to it and it's really high? What do you think makes you exceptional in that way? Was it because you were homeschooled and so you weren't exposed to a lot of like listen, schools can be toxic. It's just this pond of kids that just don't know how to behave because they were raised by parents that didn't know any better.
Yeah.
Right. And I love what you said about having like strong family ties here. Maybe that's what influenced you in that way. But then I think, no, because one of my baby daddies had a good family too.
I know what it was.
Okay. Tell me what it was.
I know what it was.
Okay.
It's the same thing that we're talking about. I had a father. He was a good father. He taught me things. He's still involved in my life. He's still one street away from where I live. He calls me in the morning to see how I'm doing. He drops off fruit in the afternoon. He drops off books, even though he doesn't read that much, but he knows that I have a library and he knows that I love to read. He thinks about me. He goes camping with me. He was with me in Boy Scouts. He was with me whenever I learned how to swim and to ride a bike. I had a father.
So you had a good dad.
Yeah.
And that's what made it so important for you to be a good dad.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to have a good dad.
It is important to have a good dad, but
it's not always something that people can choose. And I get that. I got a video actually about a day ago, and it had nothing to do, it was not apropos to this, and yet it fit perfectly, of course. And it gave statistics, and it said the child is more likely to have this, more likely to do that when we're talking about rape, when we're talking about crime, when we're talking about indigent behavior, etc. It was all based upon the fact that if you didn't have a dad, your percentages went way down as to how you were able to succeed in life. People still succeed without a dad. We know about them right and left. I love biographies. I love victory stories. However, a dad is so important. And if we believe that, and if we acknowledge that, and if the dad passes that on to his son, and the son passes it on to his son, and if the woman holds them accountable for those things as much as she possibly can, I believe that the fault of our 47% ratios nowadays fall equally upon the men and the women. The women are not requiring enough. The men are not doing enough. Between the two of them, there's a gap. And between that gap, we have a man. We have the man that I believe is the father. That Peter Drucker, a business philosopher, said that every great organization is merely the lengthened shadow of a single individual. Well, every great family is merely the lengthened shadow of a single individual. A man who stands tall casts a shadow over his entire family that is perpetrated. That's what a legacy is.
Indeed. You said something interesting. The woman is not requiring enough of the man.
Absolutely.
And that, of course, piqued my interest because what do you mean by that? We're not requiring enough? Because I required a lot out of all my baby daddies,
now
right?
we're getting really.
So I want to know what I wasn't asking enough of. Are you telling me that I gave too much in all these relationships, and maybe that's why it all turned out the way it did?
Well, the first solution to establishing a problem is, first of all, knowing who's to blame. So let me back this up again. Accountability is where change begins. If you believe you had anything to do with it, then holding yourself accountable first is how you are able to avoid that problem in the future. Mm-hmm. If you would say that you had nothing to do with it, then you basically be saying that you had nothing to do with the relationship. So there has to be something in between. You had to have something to do with it, maybe not all to do with it. Maybe you weren't all to blame or part to blame, but you had something in there. You had blame. Unless you acknowledge what your blame is, you can't change anything. So if there was anything in you that had to do with the fact that you are where you are now, then you have to acknowledge that. If there's not anything in you to do with the fact that you are now, then you lack any power in your life. You cannot control things because there's nothing good or bad that you can do to make your life move a certain direction. So in other words, a victim is never successful. And you're never successful if you're a victim. So you have to acknowledge for the first time, at least, that you are responsible for everything that happened in the relationship. And so is he. And when you first acknowledge that, then you can have now complete control of your life again. And now you can do whatever you want. Because now you are the only thing that stands between you and success, between you and failure, between you and your goals, between you and your outcome-based decisions, which we've been talking about, which are so important, more important than us. So whose fault is it? I don't know. I have accepted fault in many relationships, even if I didn't necessarily feel that I should, because that brings the power back in my court. Because now I can do something about it. Because I know if there was a way for me to have changed things, then I can change things. I don't enjoy a lack of empowerment. I don't enjoy a lack of options.
Has there been a situation in your journey as a father where you didn't know what to do or how to handle it? You speak from this place of such confidence.
No, the entire time. And even now at this point, I'm establishing bulwarks. I've done things that I know to be true because I either, number one, have seen them happen, or number two, that I've read about them that happened so many times that I know them to be true. I do believe in objective truths. I believe that there are ways to fix things. I do see that we are broken right now. When we talk about this baby mommy diary, whole idea, the whole idea is a broken idea. The whole idea is that we were not supposed to be this way. This is how we cope. This is how we deal. This is how we salvage failure.
Indeed.
When I asked, or when you asked earlier, and this was a tough one, is what responsibility do the women have? It's tough because I have a hard time giving responsibility to another person, much less another gender. You understand how that could engender animosity towards me. If I try to tell you what you should have done, I'm not you. I was never in your place. I've never had any female things happen to me, so I don't know what a female feels. I don't know where you were at in your relationship. However, as a person, I can say when you allow things, then things happen. And I believe, as much as I am a guy in Corpus, I swear to God, if anybody watches this, they're going to be laughing the entire time if they know me. But there is a right and a wrong way to date. And when you allow certain things in a dating relationship, then you are participating in the future of the Baby Mama Diaries. You are beginning it, and it is conscientious, and it is cognizant in the entire way. You know what you're doing, even if you're drinking, and you've made a decision. And at some point, you are going to be held accountable. And if not by somebody else, then it'll be by yourself. And the sooner that we hold ourselves accountable, the sooner we can put off having someone else try to do it to us.
We're going to turn this into a public service announcement to help prevent the radical growth of baby mamas in Corpus Christi. I appreciate your message, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. It is a conscious effort, especially here in Corpus Christi. Don't go out. Don't get drunk. Don't go knock up the bartender.
I mean, come on.
It was advice another baby daddy had given us on a previous episode. So,
like I said, I feel like the biggest hypocrite in the world, but
the message here is consistent.
the message is here is, I mean, if you're here, you're here for a reason. For the most part. No,
and what you're saying
Everybody.
about even the fact that we're here having this discussion does bring light to this very broken state our society is in some ways, because we have come so far away from the nuclear family. I don't know how old you are, but when I was in school, we were still learning about the nuclear family, which was the mother, the father, a boy and a girl, a dog, and a picket white fence, one car in the garage. Everybody was happy.
Yeah. I was a little bit older than you, so I had to worry about the nuclear bomb and the nuclear family. But all right.
Well, I was
Right in the middle.
right in the middle. And yet I also feel like I came of age in a time, like I'm a legacy baby mama. My mom was a baby mama. My mom's mom was a baby mama. My grandmother had 4 baby daddies in a time in the 50s and 60s where that was unheard of. Call her what you want. I like to think she just enjoyed her life.
It was inflation. 1973. You saw in 1973, you saw single parents take off and not having children. And that change right there around 1970s, whenever people realized it was economically not viable to be able to do it, it slowed down a lot, the whole family thing. But what didn't slow down was the other side, the single side of it. So whereas never before that had happened, that rose around the same period of time because there was a lack of responsibility. People couldn't afford it. They still did it. Where else do we find that? And everywhere with our finances. If we're wealthy, we spend a lot. The moment we get broke again, we continue spending a lot. So what happened was we spent our way into a single family rather than a nuclear family, in my opinion.
You don't feel like perhaps, and I might get a lot of flack, feminists, and of course I'm a woman and sometimes a very proud misandrist, but sometimes I feel like there was a breakdown just in the social fabric when women absolutely turned away from married life and said, hey, you know what, I'm tired of being in this relationship where I'm not fulfilled, I'm not satisfied. We're going to burn our bras, become more sexual. I'm sorry?
What would have caused that? Like, if you're saying there was a point when that happened, I pointed at inflation as the reason why families changed their dynamics. Mm-hmm. What would you say is the reason why that would have occurred, if it occurred, and when did it occur?
I couldn't give you an exact reason. I can just say...
So you're saying at some point women got tired of men and they said, hey, we're fine. Well, I would submit that there is a historical point whenever women are able to say that, when before they couldn't. Right? Economically,
yeah, you're right.
Women could not do that until a certain period of time. There was a change somewhere in there. Call it suffrage. Call it whatever feminine movement that happened during that time. There was something that changed. Now, remember what I said about outcome-based decisions?
Okay.
What would be the outcome of these decisions? Is single families? Is single family the goal? Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. So something changed in there in the feminist point. And it wasn't a good change. It was a bad change because the outcome produced single families. What should have changed was that more nuclear families occurred, or a greater sense of stability, or something positive should have come from that change. Wherever that historical point we have not agreed upon is, and whatever the historical issue is that we have not agreed upon is, but whatever that was, it twitched, and it went the wrong way.
But if we go what you're saying, is it possible that there was an economic impact? Women began to be more confident that they could support themselves without the husband?
So they did. And then what happened? What was the outcome of that decision?
More single parent households.
Which was not the outcome we wanted.
No.
So it was a good thing. We called it a good thing women are independent, women are free, women can work on their own, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. Don't lynch me. But whatever that thing was that happened right then, it produced a negative result. And we are experiencing the negative result in spades at the moment. Like it's getting much worse.
It
Whatever,
is. It
as
is.
women
It is.
become more, whatever that thing is, that again, I agree with on the premise. Don't lynch me. However, the outcome, not good.
Okay, well, here's my question. I love this discussion, by the way. So if women became more confident that they could support themselves, they could manage a household without the man, why was the behavior on the man's part not, hey, maybe I need to do a better job. Maybe I need to not cheat. Maybe I need to not disrespect my wife. Maybe I need to be more involved in my family life. Maybe I need to, not play
Well, maybe
PlayStation for 5 hours
well,
when I get
maybe
home.
when women became more free, they gave more things for free that guys should have had to pay for with marriage, a relationship, and a family.
Oh, we're going to take that way back to like Adam and Eve.
Maybe women have something that women, or that men, I'm sorry, maybe women have something that men really want and they'll do anything for. And maybe they shouldn't use that as collateral at 7-Eleven.
Who have you ever picked up at 7-Eleven, Rick? Now I want to know.
You know, when was 7-Eleven? I think it was a virgin
Inquiring
back then.
minds.
I'm almost certain I was a virgin back then. So. Okay.
No, like 7-Eleven at Stripes. Are we going to be finding you in the taco line too? I just want to know.
I'm not going to be able to go anywhere after this.
Man, it's giving me a lot to think about here. Because I can see and I can track when I was writing the Baby Mama Bible. There's so many statistics that hurt my head for how many numbers of women are in the situation they're in. What is the likelihood of a person who grows up in a single family household to become a single parent themselves?
Yeah.
And it is this endless cycle that just keeps perpetuating itself. And one of my interests here is that I feel like we are passing along generational trauma instead of generational wealth and generational good mental health. Where do we find the road back to that? I don't see us. I don't see this being fixed. The way that we are now. Is it?
So what you're saying is, if I'm correct, and I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry.
No, of course.
Is you don't see a way back to the path, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how do we get back to the path? Well, first of all, we establish there's a path. How do we establish there's a path? We establish that there is an objective morality, that there is something we should be doing. In other words, by saying that the nuclear family is something to be desired. There's a lot of people that won't say that. There's a lot of people that will say that's just one way of living life. Nuclear family, it's fine. You can have it, you cannot. In fact, it may be actually a problem. Talk to the Atlantic Monthly, and they'll tell you this week, the nuclear family destroys people for whatever reason. But if we can establish an objective truth, if we can establish a path, establish a morality, then we can establish how to get back to it. And if we establish that the goal is to be moral or to be right, then what actions that follow within that, now we have something to work with. One of my favorite authors, not my favorite authors, Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand writes the Atlas Shrugged, the Fountainhead, and she created the philosophy of objectivism, that there is a right and that there is a wrong. If we know that there is a right to return to, then we can go home. If there is no right to go home to, then there is no home. Then we just wander. We are wandering. What you're talking about right now is a period of wandering. We're both wandering and wondering. We have no idea what to do and how to get there. But if we can establish morality, so for some it might be Christianity. I do believe in God. I do believe in the morality of God. However, even if you don't go that direction, even if you don't believe in spirituality or religion or God, then you can still believe that there's a right way to do things. And that right way is the whole point of virtue. Virtue is something that feels right when you're done doing it. Pleasure is what feels right while you're doing it, and it feels awful afterwards. So if we're going back to an objective truth, we're seeking the happiness of morality. Happiness is that state of mind which is achieved by the attainment of one's own virtue. And virtue is not subjective.
So parenting is a virtue?
I'm sorry?
Do you believe parenting is a virtue?
150%. One of the greatest virtues. It might be the greatest virtue. It might be our highest calling.
But not everybody does it correctly.
Not everybody does it at all. And even if you don't do it, doesn't mean you don't have an opportunity to practice that virtue. You can still be an uncle, or you can still be a grandparent, or you can still be something in an adoption-related sense. But it still is the same idea of being pastoral, being raising somebody, being maternal or being paternal to somebody else, to developing an arrow and a quiver, so when there's bad guys out there, you're ready to shoot it the way it should be shot.
We have wandered far away from where I wanted to be.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Um, we've covered a lot here. And I really feel like we kind of got away from, you've explained so much, and that really was great. What do you think your biggest challenge has been in being a single father?
Presence. I feel like it's so easy to drop out of their life because they have mothers and stepfathers that are taking care of things for them. So I don't have to check every morning if they've eaten. I don't have to check to see if they got back to home on time. I don't have to check to see if their math is done. I lack the presence of being a parent. I lack the most important part of being a parent, the consistency, the boring consistency of being a parent, of having to change diapers and having to do things. I don't have any regrets in my life, but there is one thing that I wish I could do better or over again, and that's parenthood.
You would do it all over
Oh,
again?
of course, I didn't do it right.
Wow. So
I'll do it a lot better this time.
you'd be willing to gamble for a third baby mama?
I didn't say all that. I meant the previous two. No,
Are
no,
we
no,
going
no.
back to like adoption,
No,
maybe?
no, you misunderstood me. Yeah.
A successful
I
single
wouldn't-
man, we could
yeah,
find you.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule it out, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the one thing I wish I had been able to do better was that I was talking to my mom this morning at lunch, and we were talking about how Job had lost everything, and everything was reproduced. Like he had lost, his oxen. He got 7 more oxen. The only thing that weren't reproduced, that weren't doubled, were his children. His children were just 7 more children because of the fact that there already were 7 children. So I feel like I've already had my 2 regardless. No matter what, I've already had my opportunity. I feel like anything else on top of that would be a blessing and an opportunity, but it's not something that I need to live again. I've lived it once. I just wish I'd lived it better.
Great. That's a great answer. I guess I wonder, you grew up with a very strong family base. You talk about the influence of your father in your life. All things considered, and you can't go back, you can't not have your kids, right? What do you think you would have done differently so that your children grew up the way that you did, in a 2-parent household with their mother, their father, still in a marriage that's intact? If you could go back and do anything differently, what would you do?
I always think I think I could have more patience. I think I could have been more tolerant. I think I could have been more consistent. In other words, I could have exemplified better character traits.
Do you think, what do you think your baby mamas would say about you if given the opportunity?
I try not to think about it.
But if I have them on the show and I say, hey, Rick was here and he said great things about you guys.
Yeah. Well, start with that, first of all. But I'll have
I'm a
better
professional,
response. I don't know. Anything I say sounds self-serving or egotistical because I would hope they'd say positive things. So to be self-deprecating, to say the things that I think that they would probably say that I didn't do as well as I should have, is that I would say that I have too many things on my plate, that I'm too interested in the world, that I'm too preoccupied, that I'm too heavenly minded and not earthly good in some sense. Like maybe I spend too much time in books and not enough time with people. that I enjoy my solitude too much. And I have one big fault is that I like to do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it. I want to have my own will and my own way. I've been single for a long time, and it's easy to be self preoccupied. And I think it may not be as bad as it used to be, but I think that was a problem as a father. I think a father should be more outward thinking than I was. So I would say that they might say about me is that I was deeply flawed as a husband and as a boyfriend, but I'm working on things.
What would they say about your fatherhood ability, your ability to be a
I don't know.
father?
I think they both think I'm a good father. I hope.
I would hope
I,
too.
I would do anything for my kids. I would give anything for them, and I hope I've shown that. I've flown all over the place and many states to go see my son. My daughter, there's just no question whatsoever. Anybody that knows me knows that.
You have a favorite then?
Unfortunately, I would say that the person I spent with, so much time with every single morning, and the fact that she is a daughter, I feel like she needs me so much more than Richard. Richard I love and admire, and of course he's my son. He's the fourth Richard, but there's nothing like a daughter.
I agree. I have a son and I have two daughters. They both have uniquely impacted my lives and my life in various ways. But yeah, there's nothing like a daughter for sure. Take me through a day with your kids. You travel. You've mentioned you travel to see them, so you have to go to some extreme measures, I imagine, to see them. Flights and being in an airplane right now is tricky. Financially, the pressure of that, and then I imagine you still pay child support. How do you deal with the stress and the pressure of trying to be a good dad, but they're not here? How do you cope with that?
So neither of my baby mamas have ever taken me to court to pay child support. So both of them, we've always been on our agreements. So in other words, whenever anything was needed, sometimes it was monthly, sometimes it was more, sometimes it was less, I took care of what I did. I always took care of meals, I always took care of clothes, and I took care of things that I could take care of when I could take care of them. I always just told them whatever you need, whenever you need it, and I kept them both as long as I possibly could. When I think about a day with Ava and Richard, and whenever I did have them together, and it was usually together, if it was together, then we just explored. We went to bookstores almost every single time. We always went to the beach. We went to the hill country. We liked doing mini adventures. Watched a lot of videos, a lot of movies, and that kind of things growing up. And Richard's now doing puppets with the Henson daughter, Jim Henson's daughter
Really?
in New York. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Wow, that is really
So
awesome.
we had a whole lot of Sesame Street time growing up. He's got people that are tattooing his drawings on their arms now at this point.
Wow, congrats. I'm Sesame Street kid through and through.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm thrilled for you. That's something to be so proud of.
Thank you. So, whenever we talk about days, it's a whole lot of food and it's a whole lot of adventures and it's a whole lot of just doing things that we consider interesting. I get the good side of being a dad. I realize that. The good side of being a parent. Isn't it nice whenever that helicopter parent comes in and just enjoys the heck out of their kids and then takes off again? Again, that would not be what I would want in my life as parenthood. It's what I have. And I've tried to do the best with it that I can. But I do realize whenever I'm on this show and I'm talking about it, that I'm talking about my 8% parenthood. That there is a 92% parenthood and it does belong to them. And there's a portion of it that belongs to their stepdads as well. So I do recognize that. And again, that's one of my regrets is that I wish I could occupy a greater position there. But it would be hypocritical of me to say that I'm doing everything
That's
or even
interesting
most things.
that you've kind of marked it down to a percentage of their life. So you feel like you only influence their life 8% of the time?
No, I said presence, physical presence. In other words, holidays, nights, weekends, etc. I'd like to think that my influence in their life is well over 100%. I'd feel like every single day and night that I'd like to think that every decision that Ava makes based upon character is because of a conversation we had in the morning on the way to Flower Bluff when we're getting tacos from Bill Miller's. And we're talking about how to do the right thing in a right situation for the right people, and how it's more important to give a smile than to receive a smile. I'd like to think that Richard looks back upon things that I've told him about Ayn Rand, about philosophy, and about religion in general. I'd like to believe that he still converses with a portion of that in his mind, that there's some element of truth that I was able to convey and I'm able to personify, hopefully. But as much as all that influence is, I feel like I've had a relatively short amount of time to inject it in person. I could have had more if I had done more.
I love what you say about having those important conversations with your children as they grow. And Richard, of course, being older, that's what I gather.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets in a relationship, gets in his first relationship, has a child. And of course, us being older and being parents, we have this wonderful insight that we can see when it's coming, the end, right? And here's your son about to embark on his own journey of being a single father, a baby daddy. What advice would you give him?
Richard asked me if I had any advice to give him 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember what I said, but I said something funny, and I so regret it because I don't even remember what it was, but it was something stupid. I don't know, you know, never eat yellow snow or something like that. It was just one of those. I was doing something to be funny, but in looking back, I wish if I had to actually give him advice, um, that's a hard one because how do you condense it to one thing? But I would say, seek out the truth. Just don't stop that.
I like that. And for your daughter?
It couldn't be any different. I mean, she has the same thing. I would say philosophically, is she's at least as intellectually profound as he is. Richard, read a lot more growing up because he's had a few years on her, but Ava's reading now more than ever. So I would also want her to try to find out what she believes is correct. But it's not seek out a truth. Again, I said seek out the truth. I think it's so important that Ava tries to find what the moral right thing to do is and then to pursue that. If she does that, she has a chance of making this time around better than our last time around.
I was just about to ask you what you thought the most rewarding part of being a father was, but you spoke about that like that's what would be the most rewarding part of seeing.
Legacy is watching your kids do things better than you could have done them or better than you did do them. Isn't that exactly what you want? Wouldn't you say you just want your children to have a better life, make better decisions, be in a better relationship, live in a better family, do everything better than yourself? I can't think of a single parent that cares about their kids that would not want that as their primary focus for their children. That's the outcome-based decision.
We share that vision, right? But there are a lot of parents out there who don't. There are a lot of fathers out there who are not involved with their kids, who don't even think about how they're not there. I think you've made a concerted effort, even though your children are not physically here in the same city with you. It sounds like you go above and beyond to make sure that you're still the voice in their ear, or they know that they can reach across however many miles and pick up the phone and ask you for advice or talk to you about what's going on in their life. And there's not enough men, I feel like, that understand quite how important it is. I'm not sure if it's from this perspective and being a baby mama trying to find some answers for myself, is it just men are inherently narcissistic and they don't think about anything outside of themselves, whereas women, because we carried these children, it's so hard to break away from that. Like I have all my children's locations. Two of them are adults. I have to know where they are, what they're doing, and that they're safe. And I don't understand this trend really of men who just have children and leave them on the side of the road like a litter of puppies. Mm-hmm. Care nothing for their upbringing, their financial stability, and in some cases, the household that they're being brought up in. If you could think in all of your intellectual wisdom that you have brought here with me today, and we've talked about the economic impacts, we've talked about women coming into their own, and finding a common path back to where maybe we can't go back, right? Is there anything you can think of that would help us find a common path to make this a better experience? Is there something that men need to be made more aware of? Is there something that women need to be requiring more of them?
Okay, so I'll have theories,
Love to
and
hear them.
and they'll be vilified, and as much as they'll be accepted, I'm sure, because they're theories. But I believe that one of the problems in our relationships today is that women are not providing peace, that men want peace. They want to be able to come home to somebody that gives them peace. If they do, then they're more likely to come home. On the other side, I feel like that men are not providing stability. They're not providing support. They're not providing parameters. They're not establishing gates. They're not establishing doors. In other words, they're not creating a structure, which is so important for a man to create. A man builds, a man constructs, a woman refines. In my opinion, again, going back to the nuclear family or to what I might call a traditional relationship, what I would like, what I believe in, is I believe that's what worked. And it has nothing to do with my theory. It has to do with the fact that when that was happening, it was working. That when we look at the cliff that fell off, whenever that stopped happening, people are not doing that thing anymore. So, what can a woman do is she can work at being the peace provider in a relationship and make a man want to be in a relationship as much as possible. And she can withhold things that are meant to be for a relationship. That's what a woman can do. That's what I can tell Ava to do. Withhold things for a relationship and then provide peace. That's all you can really do. I can't promise you the guy won't cheat. I can't promise you the guy won't leave. But I can promise you that if you do that, you're giving it the best chance you possibly could. On the Richard side of it, I can tell him to respect the woman. I can tell him to provide stability. I can tell him to create a place where peace can be reproduced, that peace can live. Peace can't live in a place that doesn't have structure. Both are absolutely necessary. It's 100% the woman's fault, and it's 100% the guy's fault. And as soon as we accept the fact that it's not 50-50, then we have a chance.
Okay, it sounds like the too long didn't read version of that was women don't have sex and men make sure that she has a house and then maybe you'll get laid more often.
Both of those greatly simplified. That I think that women provide much more than sex, and I think men provide much more than a house.
And
But both of those are representative on monopoly terms. If you were just going to throw a house and a sex symbol up, then you have the broad idea.
yeah,
But they are much more than either one of those things.
of course.
Both of those are all kinds of cultural decisions that are involved. There's so much more to that that creates
There's
the
no
possible
simple
form.
answer.
There is no simple answer. There is no monopoly version. There is no life game that we can all play and walk away with 7 kids in the minivan.
We're screwed.
Finally!
Literally.
Finally, we've achieved a consensus.
I want to go back real quick just to something you said about child support. In this part of the world where I'm at, men have to be forced to pay child support. Child support for me has been a varied experience of my 3 baby daddies. One of them, I never sought child support because I knew that financially he was going to have a hard time making it himself. My second ex-husband offered me a significant amount of money to ease his guilt about cheating on the relationship and leaving me with a child who had barely turned 1. And the third one currently owes me, I believe, $36,000 and is working under the table to avoid paying me anything.
How could you possibly be a Miss Andrews?
How could I possibly, right? But you didn't have, your baby mamas didn't have to go that route.
I've never said no. I've never been taken to court. I've never been threatened. There's never been an issue. We've always accommodated each other. We've always agreed on things. There's never been a time whenever they asked for something that I did not acknowledge or agree to.
Do you think that was because of the quality of the woman that you chose to have a relationship with that resulted in a child? Or do you believe that was just luck of the draw?
Yes, no, I'm just kidding. No, no, the first one for sure, and not luck of the draw. I would say the quality was not random.
Hmm.
Hopefully, there was something in there. I hope. But on the other side, I would also say it had to do with our amicable relationship afterwards. And it was not always amicable. There were times with both of them that I hated them and they hated me. But somehow we made those times brief and we got past them. And one of them wasn't so long ago. It was only a year or two or three or four, I don't know, a while back. Whatever it was, we had to get past that as well. But getting past both of those, I think, was the fact that again, I know I've gone back to this like a broken record, but the whole outcome based decision, we knew what we wanted and we knew what we were trying to achieve, and ultimately that finally got better than our pride. And really, they say 99% of all arguments result from a lack of communication of expectations. If I don't tell you what I want, and if I don't know what you want, and if we're not on the same page, we're always going to have that disharmony, that dissonance that creates the argument. But what if you and I have exactly the same harmony? We have exactly the same radio length, and that is our kids.
Hmm.
And we have one objective, and it's not me and it's not you. If that's the case, if we can get bigger than ourselves, then I think we have a chance at peace.
So the focus should always be on the child and what's best for the child. And of course, what's best for the child is that the parents are at least civil to each other.
Amicable at the very least. That we show how adults get along with one another, and that they see that it's right for a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, even if they're exes, to have respect for one another. We have to set the tone for a future relationship, right? How else are we going to set the tone without a relationship? That's our number one way of showing kids of how they're supposed to have a good relationship. We can do it many other ways, like we show them how it's supposed to be. Like we didn't have it, but we can show them how it's supposed to be. But the best way is always a model. If we can show a model for amicability, then we can show a model for success.
You're single now. You've said you've been single for a while,
COVID, I think.
since COVID.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She
So
passed away. I'm just kidding.
as you navigate your single life as a single dad, at what point when you're dating a new woman do you say, "Okay, I'm ready to introduce you to my children"?
It's been different every time.
How many times have there been?
I've dated in between, but not like, like 3 or 4 weeks or a month or whatever. It's been relatively short amount of times. I say it's different every time because sometimes I'll be like me and Ava are going to the bookstore and I've been just talking to a girl. I say, hey, join us at the bookstore, as friends. So I don't consider it a date necessarily. It's the fact that we're all hanging together. So I think that's nice. I think it's enjoyable every now and then to show your child the fact that you are friends with people of different sexes. I don't consider that dating.
So it's just there's nothing specific. It's just kind of like if the opportunity arises.
I would consider that very casual. Yeah. I do think it's important if I really care about the person and they're meeting my daughter, obviously, like this is a moment kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
them to think about it. But at the same time, I'm in Corpus. I've been in Corpus all my life. I'm on Facebook and so is she. Everyone knows us. We can't go anywhere. Cafe Calypso, Half Price, Barnes and Noble, the mall, doesn't matter. Anywhere we go, any restaurant, there's 2 or 3 people that we know. That's okay. We're citizens of our city. This street, we walk up and down. She loved the phonographs. Whenever she came down from Michigan, we'd stop in at every single place that was along here.
I particularly love Corpus Christi too. I'm not from here, but proudly I'm here. Have you ever, in your time being single and introducing your children to different people that you're dating, has it ever happened where your children don't particularly like the person that you're dating?
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle that?
Stop dating them.
Wow.
Yeah, it's generally for a reason. It's generally that they're kind
Wow.
of rude or that they're too loud or that their child is really, really, just misbehaving all the time or whatever. And Ava's like, no more. You know,
So even though
second,
Ava doesn't
yeah,
live here,
yeah.
Ava's like,
Well,
look,
that was years ago. But
I just don't see this working out.
nowadays,
Not
I'm
for
sure,
any of us.
nowadays, I'm sure it'd be different. But yeah, they were. I held both of their opinions in importance.
I love that. That's great. So then they know too that they are just
Sometimes
that
I knew
important.
first. Yeah.
Really? Sometimes they knew first that it wasn't going to work out.
No, Ava, yeah. Yeah, that census.
I love. Is there like a success rate that
Yeah,
Ava
she's
has?
like, Dad, can we go to Target one more time? Because I really don't feel like we're going to be able to go many more times after this.
Um, I have just had the greatest conversation with you. Thank you so much. I think I'm going to have to like provide a lexicon, a dictionary specific to this so that all the other baby daddies can follow along. I really appreciate it. I mean, it was really something to talk about where this kind of breakdown happened in our social fabric because it's part of the answers I'm seeking here. You know, what are we missing as mothers? And how do we encourage more fathers to participate, to be a
I
part
was
of their lives?
I was talking to somebody this evening, and we were talking about a few things like this. When we were talking about families and kids, and he's going to go see his daughter in Tennessee, and he was kind of lamenting the fact that he had not done things right, like I just did, and like I'm sure many baby daddies do. Is that I wish I had done things better, in retrospect. However, I think that the past is immutable. We won't be able to change it. It is what it is. The future is uncertain. We have no idea what's coming. Better not to worry about it. The present is something that we can do something about. So, as fathers, we have the opportunity tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, March 4th, to march forth and be better dads. If we're looking for anything from this podcast, is we should be looking for decisions based upon an outcome. And if we are looking for those decisions, then I think the decision we should be making is tomorrow to be better dads. As long as we're still dads, we can still be better.
Thank you very much. That is so important. I love that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your story with us. I know we kind of got off topic, but I it was really valuable to me. Thank you so much for your time, Rick.
It's my pleasure.
Tell the people where they can find you. They want to buy a house, sell a house. You're a broker, and so I imagine you've got a couple agents that they could get in touch with. You've got a website. You have a phone number and email you'd like to share with the people.
My name is Rick Gomez. My website is rickgomez.com. My physical office is on Can on Everhart and Holly. We're full time, so you can come in anytime you want. I have about 25 agents. They're all fantastic. I've been doing this for 19 years. Feel free to Google me. You can find me that way. I'm easy to get a hold of. I'm on Facebook. Add me as a friend.
Oh, there we go. See, Adam as a friend, girls. Thank you again. And hopefully you guys continue to tune in here. Baby Daddy Diaries is just my absolute pleasure to be here and to help these gentlemen share their stories. Let's see what comes next, y'all. Thank you so much. Y'all have a good night. Thank you.